Hey guys! So, today we're going to answer a great question, which is, Frederick, do these SPA frameworks like React, Vue, Angular hinder JavaScript skill progression? So let's get into it. Now this is a great question, and the thing is, you may think that you know the answer to this question, or maybe not. Let's see. You see, from my perspective, the answer is yes, but not for the reason that you may think. Just let me walk you through it. You see, one of the things about SPA frameworks that brings a lot of value to you is that it abstracts away all of the problems of creating a JavaScript application within the context of the browser. But if we talk about progression within JavaScript, if we kind of have to define things here, because JavaScript as a language, I mean, let's say that you're using React. I mean, the JavaScript, the only thing that is really React specific is the framework itself, and maybe then JSX if you're using that, which you're most likely using JSX, right? But the actual JavaScript that you're writing, the logic and all of that good stuff, that's still JavaScript. And the progression that you will have skill-wise within the language may not differ all that much, regardless of what framework you're using, if you're using a framework, or if you're not using a framework. I mean, that's pretty simple. I would even go as far as to say that learning JavaScript as a language, the syntax itself, shouldn't take all that long. I mean, mastering it and, having it in the, having it really embedded and really being something that you know may take a while, but it's not that hard to learn. And you will progress regardless of what framework you're using. However, that's not the whole story, because JavaScript has one more thing that makes it a very tricky subject, and that is the browser API. You see, the browser API is the thing that you're going to miss out on. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that when you're using an SPA framework, virtually every single thing that has to do with the browser API is going to be abstracted away from you. There are certain things that you may still use from the browser's API, but overall, you are going to leverage, in this case, say React, to take care of a lot of the interactions between you and the browser. And what's even a little bit more nasty is that once you go down that route, I see this tendency, I see people do this, and this is why we have all these dependencies and all these problems with packages, and why JavaScript bundles and JavaScript SPA applications grow to like be monstrous in size. And what happens is that people simply have this mindset that they will solve everything using a package. And they add more and more packages, and very quickly you see how the size of your bundles kind of spirals on you. And I will argue that has to do with it's both a culture thing, but it's also a lack of understanding. It's a lack of understanding how the browser works and native APIs and so forth. And that's the thing that's going to impact you when you use an SPA framework. You see, you may not think this if you're just starting out. This is probably not something that you have considered, but there is one thing you should remember, guys. Most of what you will do has to do with more than just the specific SPA framework that you have picked. You see, as a developer, you will spend anything between 60 to 50% or 40%, it doesn't matter, but almost half your time debugging issues and figuring out problems. One classic example is that someone will come to you and they will talk to you about, all right, this looks, in this case, if you're using an SPA framework or if you're doing front-end work, they're going to come and say, hey, we have this really weird use case, or we have this inconsistency in the behavior in one browser on one specific device. Can you fix it? And then you're just going to have to figure out why in that specific browser the layout is different, or that the interactions are different, or the animation isn't running the same way, or things of that nature. That's not something that the SPA framework is going to help you with. Then it comes down to your understanding of the browser. And the same thing goes for basically every project. And it's very important. This is why I tell people that it is vital that an SPA framework is an enhancement to your own already existing skill set, because it's just a tool, guys. It is not the universe. It's just a tool, and if that's the problem with using a SPA framework too early in your career, because once you do, you will most likely you will probably stay there. You will stay in that SPA framework, and you will be less of a developer for it, because you will not naturally develop the skills that are required to actually understand the whole browser API and how all these interactions work. I mean, there are tons of these different, how do I put this, pieces of knowledge and quirks that you naturally kind of adapt, and you kind of figure them out by working in the actual browser environment. But you don't get that when you're working in an SPA framework. And if you want to be truly skilled with JavaScript, a lot of it comes down to understanding the browser and understanding the browser API. That's like half of the job, guys. Sometimes I will even joke and I will say that, oh yeah, 30% of my job is, or rather, when I do front-end work, 30% of the whole thing is to just write the code, and then 70% is to get it to work in all the browsers. Because that's the reality. It is absolutely the reality. So what I want you to take away from this little discussion of ours is that yes, your skills and your skill development as within JavaScript will be impacted by using an SPA framework. It may not hinder your ability to write JavaScript itself, but it will hinder your understanding of how the browser works. And that is why I urge you to make sure that you understand not just the framework, because the framework is just a tool. You may not think so today, but who knows, next month or in 6 months, there might be another framework, and then you're going to have to look into that. The one thing that you can trust is that if you have knowledge about the platform, the browser itself, you can pick up these new frameworks fairly easily. But what's even more important is that a lot of the issues and a lot of the time that you spend on debugging and figuring things out and making good technical decisions on behalf of your project has not so much to do with just with the framework that you have, but it has to do with your understanding of the web platform, and that's what you need. You need to understand the platform. That's at least how I feel about it. Have a great day.